touch this.
Like every day when I look at my Facebook page, I see lots of posts from people who are blaming liberals and the Democrats for what's wrong in this country. And at the very top of the list is immigration. And I agree, immigration is a serious issue. Billy and I put up a pretty long video yesterday about it. And it's something I guess we're going to be continuing to talk about for some time, because there seems to be some discrepancy in the way that people think and believe, and what they think and believe, and what's actually happening. Now, most of you know I'm a dirty, rotten Democrat and a crazy liberal. So that's the perspective that I speak from whenever I speak about any issue. Billy and I are going to do another video tomorrow. He's just too tired to do one today. He was up until like 3 in the morning editing the one we did yesterday. But what I want to talk about for a few minutes, and then I'm going to let it go, because we're going to work on this again tomorrow. Billy and I, we're going to put up another long video on it, is what's going on the border right now. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of news about what's going on the border, and there doesn't appear to be much of a reflection about it. And what the title of this is, what are you going to do? What are you going to say now? I think that all of you who are right-wing Republicans ought to comment when you see things going on that your own administration, the people that you support, are doing things that you're criticizing the Democrats and the liberals for. And this immigration thing cannot be a bigger issue to talk about that on. I see really dirty things being said about political figures, Democratic political figures. In fact, the mood seems to be, what we should do is maybe put all the Democrats in death camps at the far end of it, and on the weakest end of it, we should just do away with the Democratic Party and have no more, just have a one party system. Let the Republicans rule the country, in perpetuity. But the Republicans have had it. The Supreme Court, the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency for 8 years during Bush, for 8 years during Clinton. Oh, excuse me. He was technically a Democrat, but actually he was a Republican. And for 8 years during Obama. Another Democrat who was a Republican. But Donald Trump has had control of this government from day one. From day one, he started breaking the constitutional, just absolutely violating the Constitution. Right out in public, right out where anybody could see it. It's not contested. It's not something that people will say, "Oh no, that's not true." And if you think it's not true, just let me know. Send me something, and I'll just send you a list of everything he's done, all of his executive orders, and the ways that he's bypassed the constitutional process. I want you guys to come out and talk about what's going on at the border right now, because here is what's going on at the border right now. You guys remember all those pictures of really angry-looking Hispanic people, crowds and crowds of them, giving the middle finger to the camera, both middle fingers to the camera, saying, "F you, and we're coming, and you can't stop us"? It appears that it's true. And it's not the wall that's stopping them at all. There's no wall. They're coming where there is a wall. What's happening is they're just infiltrating the border, and ICE is picking them up. ICE and the Border Patrol are picking them up in buses and taking them to the closest towns where there are detention centers: El Paso, Las Cruces, border cities all along the border, and putting them in the detention centers. And why? Why are the buses taking? Why are our buses picking up people on our side of the border and taking them to detention centers. Why aren't they turning those buses right around back to Mexico and getting on the other side of the border and say, there you go, don't come back? Why is it? Why are we bringing them to this side and putting them in detention centers? It's a good question, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why it's a good question is that the detention centers get full, and they're full. The detention centers are full, so we're spending in El Paso about $150,000 a week to rent 4 motels, which are also full, to put all these families into. In other words, they're not in a detention center, they're not supervised. We put them in the motels, they get fed, they get the other necessities of life. I'm sure that's coming out of our Homeland Security budget. And they're trying to get them trying to get to the point where they can release 500 of them into the country, onto the streets. They're right now they're releasing them 500 a week onto the streets. That 500 of these guys who we brought over on our buses are coming out onto the streets. So why on earth is it that we are pick them up and take them to the detention center, send them to the motel? I mean, why aren't we just giving them a ride, to Milwaukee where they got a cousin, or out there to East Texas or wherever Pilgrim's Pride has their chicken plants and the hog plants and the automobile assembly plants that all of them are working at. Trust me, as a truck driver, I can tell you right now, I have been to many facilities in this country, many places that employ lots of people out in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, out in Selma, Alabama, wherever, that it's out in the country, and there are whole towns, I say towns, that have 50, 60,000 illegal immigrants living in them because there are 2 or 3 plants that utilize illegal work like that. Why don't we just go ahead and do that, and save them the trouble of having to get there? Maybe we could stop some rapes, murders, and robberies along the way. If we just give them a safe ride to the place where they're going to live and work illegally in our country. What I want to know is this: those of you who love and constantly berate Democrats for not liking him, all of you who love Donald Trump that much, where is he? Why isn't he down there on the border with his arms spread wide, telling those bus drivers to turn the buses around and go back? They'd have to do it. They work for him. Why isn't he doing that? Don't tell me it's because, we're just following policies that were developed during the Obama administration, which isn't true. All the policies that practically that ICE follows were developed during the George Bush administration, but that doesn't really matter. That doesn't matter. He has had no problem whatsoever with simply bypassing the constitutional process and doing something the way he wants it done. Now he's got the government shut down over this $5 billion, which for the life of me, I cannot figure out why didn't he take $5 billion, $5 billion lousy dollars out of the $20 trillion that he made sure that we gave the rich back in terms of tax breaks. $5 billion from that wouldn't have been even a noticeable amount. Out of $20 trillion, do the math. I'd like to know why it is that we're not that he isn't turning them around. He could be down there in person right now instead of wherever it is that he and nobody really knows where he is right now. He's retreated from public view because I don't even want to go into the fact that his numbers are cratering. Because I don't trust news services. News services say, hey, the official news is and from supposedly reliable news services that there's the numbers that support impeaching him are equal to the numbers that of people who support him. Just goes to show, doesn't it, that when we have these elections that are so polarized, like the ones that we've been having, especially this last one, that 50% of the country, or maybe a little more than 50% of the country, actually the numbers in the popular vote show that right now it's a little more than 50% of the country, have to eat a great big crap sandwich for 4 years. Why? Why is it? Why is it that half of the country is in a war with the other half? I can't figure that one out, and that's one that Billy and I are going to try to figure out over the next year as we do these videos. We're going to try to work it out. What's going on with this Cold War? I think it's been going on since the end of the Civil War. Personally, I personally believe that there's a set of values that the South believed in that had nothing to do with slavery at all, but personal freedom mostly, that just got run over during Reconstruction. Putting institutional liberalism in the catbird seat, which was the wrong thing to do. They shouldn't have run over half the country like that. But now the other half of the country is running over, over institutional liberalism to where it doesn't even exist anymore. One thing we didn't do, we did not stamp out the South. I mean, during Reconstruction. We have no such, and during Reconstruction, we had no such thing as absolutely stamping out the South. We allowed those people to go back to go right. Jefferson Davis never went to prison. Robert E. Lee never went to prison. All those people went back to their states, assumed positions of political leadership, and went right on running the South. But this backlash, this whiplash that has come about since we elected a black president is just unbelievable to me. And that's what it was. I mean, we never used to see. Of course, we didn't have Facebook before. Really, before the Facebook was a pretty new thing. So we might have had it during the Clinton administration. It's hard to know. But I want to know. I want to know from you, strong Trump supporters. Where is our president and why is he not? Would you please come on the news feed and say that you think he ought to be down now on the border personally turning the buses around, or just come out and say, no, I don't think he ought to do that. I think he ought to let him come across, and I think it's just fine, for us to bring them into our country and just let them enjoy all of the privileges of citizenship in America, which, if you haven't been to another country, you don't really understand. The privileges of citizenship in America are great. Those people are coming over here because in their country, where they look around and see rocks and jungle and scorpions and ants and no jobs, political corruption. You're not allowed to have locks on your door, have any privacy. You're not allowed to have any private thoughts. Certainly can't express them in public if you do. They want to come to our country so that they can enjoy the privilege of citizenship. And I don't blame them for wanting that. I don't. But that's right. Kissing bugs. They have kissing bugs in those places. and when they kiss you, it sticks. It's a hickey for sure. But you know what? I made a joke out of that, but it's actually not a joke. They have terrible health facilities. Most of these countries that these people want to come into our country from don't have medicine, much less socialized medicine. Socialized. So I'm a socialist too, because I believe in socialized medicine. We have it. It's called Medicare. It's called Medicaid. We have Social Security. All of you guys that are over 65 years old that come on and carp and moan and just make my life miserable with all of your going on and on and on and on and coming up with these horrible memes about socialism. I want you to send your Social Security checks back. I really don't think that You know, I really, I just feel like you ought to send your Social Security back, and don't bother with your Medicare. You know, those two kids that died in the detention camp died of type B influenza because they weren't inoculated. If they'd been in this country, they'd have gotten inoculations. That's why they came. They came because they want that. You know, the word Social Security starts with the word social. It's socialism. You know, so quit. So come on and say something intelligible about that, okay? Really, seriously. You've got something to say about everything else, negative stuff, all this stuff about yay, Trump. You know, back when Hitler, you know, became the head of Germany, that he had about half the country who just loved him. Loved him. You should have. One time I saw a pristine poster that came from that era. It was a political poster that you know, the kind that they put up all over the walls of buildings and stuff, and on the windows, shop fronts, this and that. And it was Hitler standing there, and underneath it said, "Give me 4 years, and I'll show you a Germany you can't recognize." And if you went to Dresden 4 years later, well, you know, you kind of you couldn't recognize Germany. That's the truth. So I guess he delivered on that promise. But if you're one of these people that does this, come on the news feed and make some comments about this. You know, make some ask yourself, where is our president? They're dumping thousands. Look, they're dumping thousands of people into border cities right now. Those same people who were giving us the finger on camera saying, F you can't stop us, they were right. Now, how does that work out? How does it work out that a bunch of people wearing, you know, ragged clothes and flip-flops and paste jewelry, who had to hitch rides all the way up here and walk up here, were able just to walk into our country, get put on a bus, and sent to a motel? I want you, and I'd like in your commentary for you to include what you think about our president not being down there on the border. You know, he went to Iraq for that thing that the military mocked up for him. A big surprise. Yeah, well, I'm sure it was. I'm not going to go into that either because I really don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. It sure looked like a Walmart employee, you know, meeting to me, you know, where everybody stands around and claps and cheers about, you know, how it is that they're going to do more work and make less money. And so I'm seeing a lot of animal videos, which, by the way, I love animal videos. I really do like the animal videos. So keep putting them up. But you're going to come back. You're going to come back with your god awful attacks on liberals. You would not believe the hate mail, the death threats. I've gotten death threats on Facebook. Look, I don't bother reporting them because, you know, I don't think Zuckerberg hears anything. And besides which, I believe in freedom of speech. You want to threaten my life? Go right ahead. If you want to make an attempt on it, here I am. Come get me. I would like to see a response on this. I'm not kidding you. This is something I want to see a response on.
It's the cause from having sex with somebody that, you know, doesn't really care about you.
This is a letter I got from the Bell County Board of Elections, okay? And they sent me a letter back that advised me that my vote had been thrown out. Notice of rejected ballot. And the reasons are, it was determined that the signature on the application for the ballot by mail and the carrier envelope was not signed by the same person. Except I signed them both in front of the guy. And so then the next one was statement of residence was not included in the carrier envelope, except it was. So what happened is during the recount, my vote got tossed out. I went and complained about it, you know, to the Board of Elections in Bell County, and the guy said, you must have voted for Beto O'Rourke. You must have voted for a Democrat. And I said, I did. And he said, well, you know, in Texas, the Republicans count the votes. Who knew? You know, there's an old expression that say it's not the person who gets the most counts that matters. It's the person who counts the votes. So I guess that's true. Beto O'Rourke. It was a very close election. I have a feeling if they hadn't gone back and thrown out all those Democratic votes because of nonsense, utter nonsense, you know, that maybe O'Rourke would have won that election, and Ted Cruz wouldn't be my senator for another 6 years. Another 6 years that I got to put up with a guy who I made 6 points. I tried 6 times to contact him. I didn't get to talk to him, but I did get to talk to people on his staff about that nonsensical $20 trillion tax rebate for the rich, and he never, ever, they never ever addressed that issue with me, not once. It wasn't part of the conversation. It was, thank you for contacting us, thank you for your interest in us. So now I got another 6 years of a guy who doesn't care about me. I'd like to know, by the way, from all you Cruz supporters who went out there and voted for Cruz, what's that guy done for you? What? I mean, you live in Texas. I'm not talking about you out-of-state people, because that doesn't. I'm sick and tired of national politics. You know, we've got state politics too, but we've got state constituencies that are voting because of national issues. That is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of. I have issues right here in Ted Cruz's district that need to be taken care of, need to be looked at. I've sent him letters after letters, and now he just doesn't even respond. So he's if some of you in Texas could please put on my timeline, please send to my timeline, or on the news feed or somewhere where I can see it, something that Ted Cruz did for you. And ask yourself, are there any things that he's done that didn't help me? Did the $20 trillion tax rebate help you? I mean, more than $40, because that's what we got. We got $40. But this year, the average wealthy person got $33,000. I don't mean like super rich. The super rich people got tax rebates in the millions. But the average rich person, and when I say rich person, I'm talking about somebody that earns more than $1 million a year. Those guys got $33,000 back in tax rebates. We got $40. I got $40 back for driving a truck for a living with my hands. They got $33,000 back for successfully moving money around in Wall Street and cheating us, through the banking system. Well, how about some comments on that? How about just coming out and saying, "Yeah, man, I'm all for it. I'm all for the way that the Republicans are doing business up there on the Hill. I love it. I wish they'd do more of it. Come out and say it. Don't come out and say something nasty and mean and untrue and unproven about Democrats and liberals. Don't do that until you come out and say something positive and true and provable about Republicans. Something that they did for you. What did they do for you? What? Are you really that much better off than you were when Jimmy Carter was president? I don't think so. I'm not. On the East Coast, we had a hurricane that was a century event. It was a once in a century event. It was huge, and there was no news coverage of it. Do you know who was providing the bottled water, the clean drinking water to those people? Beer companies. They were sending bottled water and water in cans over to the East Coast, to help those people out. What did our country do? What did our disaster relief? There are so many loopholes in the process that those people who lost everything still don't have anything. They have to earn it back, because God alone knows we can't have socialism. That would be socialism, wouldn't it? If a hurricane or a tornado came along, ripped your house up, and took your car and threw it out into a ditch, maybe killed your granny or something. If the government helps you, wouldn't that be socialism? Wouldn't you be a dirty, rotten, liberal socialist then? Probably not. Not in your own mind. So, you know, uh, I see cracked, skull cracked, idiotic, and that you're not getting help from your government. Uh, and why not? You're an American citizen. That coming, this segues right back into what we started with. As an American citizen, you're entitled to some protection. You should be entitled to protection from having your job shipped overseas. You should be entitled against protection for having somebody brought into the country and you know who can do your job and takes your job because they'll do it for less money. That is, I want to take a moment out and tell you something, and that is that I lost everything in a flood one time, and I know exactly what it's like. I don't know exactly what it's like for you because I wasn't there, but I know what it's like to lose everything, and I am truly sorry for that. Billy and I are trying to figure out, we're still trying to figure this out. Maybe we need to start up some kind of GoFundMe for everybody that was displaced by that hurricane, because apparently the government's not going to do a damn thing about it. They're going to take every bit of money that they can. Mitch McConnell is going to take every bit of money that he can that comes, that we could be paying down our national debt with, that we could be supporting our sick with, that we could be feeding our hungry with, that we could be housing and restoring our displaced with, and he's going to give it to the ultra wealthy. I mean, that's the end of the story, folks. That's it. What Billy and I have been trying to talk about is how in the world do you hold on to your Christian principles as you're trying to deal with politically charged issues that affect that affect other people's lives. How do you do that? How do you say to yourself, these people who are living in Honduras and Guatemala and all these other countries, we only mention these two countries, but there are a lot of countries involved in this caravan. How do we say to ourselves as Christians, we're living up to our Christian values, and just turn a blind eye, to what's going on there? Because that seems to be our two choices. Our two choices seem to be either turn a blind eye to it, or just allow them to come skipping across the border and, hey, get yourself a loan for a used car. Get yourself a cell phone right now. Here's a pair of Nikes. Just buy yourself a pair of Nikes. Here's a job that some other guy was doing, for $14 an hour. But since you'll do it for $7 an hour, we'll give the job to you. Here's a community that you can go live in that you don't have to worry about. But because it's a sanctuary city, or it's a sanctuary, sanctuary area. Now we have sanctuary areas. They're working towards sanctuary regions, believe it or not. That is, I believe in protecting Americans. I believe in protecting America. And this is nothing short of an invasion. They're not carrying guns, they're carrying their families instead, which is far more deadly. Far more deadly. Those kids are going to have kids that are going to have kids that are going to have kids. And we're going to be looking at a new chapter in Mexican history in about 40 years in this country. Folks, I don't know how we do it. I don't know how we face our God and say, yes, I am obeying the new law that you sent through your son, by doing unto others as I would have them do unto me. Because believe you me, if I was one of them, I would want you to let me into your country. I would. But the truth of the matter is that apparently that's not the world we're going to be allowed to live in. The world we're going to be allowed to live in is the one we were born into, and we're going to die in. And we're going to do most of it are going to do it right here in this country without ever leaving it. And if that's the case, we have got to do something to protect our rights of citizenship. Our citizenship is a coin. That the coin has value. It's got a heads and a tails. It's subject to inflation and deflation. Our citizenship, and right now, it's horribly inflated. The value of our citizenship is flat. I'm not kidding. I really do want it on my timeline. Bring it. But when you do, I really want to know, what you think our president should be doing about this right now, and I want you to rate him for for how he's handling it, because I don't think he's handling it very well. Those people are coming across the border where there is a wall. Okay, you put up a wall, $5 billion wall, which I think we ought to have a wall. I think we ought to take all those soldiers that he's bringing back from Iraq and Afghanistan that he's just going to discharge into and now there will be more workers that don't have any jobs. I think what he ought to do is keep them in the military and increase the size of our military and spread it out along our border. It would be perfect. We'd have a great place for our military bases to be, a good place for them to train for Middle Eastern and fighting in Africa, which is the next place we're going to have a big flare up. It'd be wonderful for that. Why don't we do that? Why don't we just build some new military bases down there on the border? Make sure that there's a continuous line, that runs border to border, and there it is. You think they're going to get across a military base or across a land that is being used by a military base? I highly doubt that. If a Mexican starts walking, or a Guatemalan or a Honduran or anybody from another country starts walking across one of our military bases, they're going to react to it a lot differently than they do right now, with no military base there. So what about that? How about a 5 mile wide strip along the border that is just one long string of military base, or maybe 2 or 3 different kinds of military bases? I think that would be a better show than what we're getting. I don't believe in this show. When Dick Cheney started the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, really he started the war in Iraq. He planned the war in Iraq before they ever took office, and that's proven. The Office of Cartography showed that in his super secret energy meeting that it was really the oil companies carving up Iraq. They a map of Iraq with sections done in blue where that was going to be ExxonMobil, and the sections done in red, those will belong to Standard Oil. And that was all done before they ever took office even. That was way before 9/11. So they had a plan. Dick Cheney started that war along with George Bush's help. I mean, George Bush was happy to help out. It was just as much his idea as Cheney's. They start the war. Well, who got all the military contracts? Yeah, all the contracts for the military. Every single contract for the military was given to Halliburton and Blackwater. And guess who owns Halliburton and Blackwater? Which is why we don't have a Weather Channel, by the way. You remember when we had that big oil leak out in the Gulf, and where it destroyed the Gulf, or a good sized portion of it. That's when we lost our Weather Channel, because the Weather Channel came down there and started doing some coverage, and Obama, like the crook he was, we started learning all kinds of stuff about our national weather service that we just couldn't believe, but it was true. And they don't want a channel that, right before, about a year and a half before the Weather Channel was removed from television, they were doing daily segments on climate change, and it was beginning to alarm people. So they just took it off. That was, that was how they did it. Put some stuff up if you identify with the right wing. If you identify with the Republican Party, put some stuff up that has to do with what's going on about the border. I want to know what your rating of our president is and what you think he ought to do. I want to know more about you, more than just your rating. I want to know what you think he ought to do. Me, I think he ought to go down there with send me your stuff. Put some other stuff up that has to do with this. Okay, that has to do with this. Don't remain silent when our president fails. Look, man, I knew that Trump had it right on immigration. That's why I did not vote as a Democrat in the election. I did not go and vote against Trump. I couldn't bring myself to vote for him because I knew too much about him. Some of the stuff I knew about him was good, but most of the stuff I knew about him wasn't. So I couldn't bring myself to vote for him, but I couldn't bring myself to vote against him either. Hillary Clinton Hillary Clinton belongs in prison for the rest of her life. So I wasn't going to vote for her. But if it had been somebody else, I probably would have not voted anyway because I felt Trump needed to be here for 4 years to do exactly what he's done, which is to throw a monkey wrench into the government, and he's done it. I mean, he's done a better job of it really than I thought he did, and the consequences of it have been kind of more severe than I thought they would be. I didn't think we'd be facing the kind of financial storm that's coming. I mean, the storm that is coming, baby, across the Atlantic. Woo! Yeah, all of you who say right now, well, the Dow's up higher than it's ever been. The S&P's doing great. Yeah, well, I want your opinions on all that in 90 days. In 90 days, we'll all have a different view of that. But for now, he's made moves that have improved Wall Street. And when Wall Street's improved, that does not necessarily and usually doesn't mean that labor, people who labor for a living, which are the people that are watching this, their lives don't improve. Their lives get worse. When the banker's life gets better, believe you me, that your life gets worse. Having something of value that is not American currency is going to be a good idea. And I don't know how you're going to do it. I think Bitcoin's going to crater. In fact, I'm sure of it. So I don't know where people are putting their money right now, but they need to put it somewhere stable, because I think America is going to be okay in the long run, but I think we're going to have a rough go of it for a little while. Yeah, precious metals do hold value. There's always a standard. People say we went off the gold standard, and technically we did. Understand that when you put your money in things like silver and gold, the value of it's actually going to go down. But that's only because the economy around the metals that you've invested money in is shrinking as well. So in a way it'll stay stable if you do a comparison. If you don't just say, "Oh my gosh, it was worth this and now it's worth that." If you look at it in comparison to the rest of the economy, if you're smart, you will protect yourself that way. The reason silver is down is because they inflated it. There was a big silver bubble, and we still haven't really gotten to the bottom of that yet. But I'll tell you right now. You may say that silver is down, and technically it is. But you go try to buy some in a pawn shop. Go try to buy some. It's still up pretty high. So if you want our president to go down there to the border and turn those buses around, because he could do it. He could do it. He could do it. There's no reason that he couldn't fly that Air Force One down there to El Paso, landed on the military base, take some soldiers down there to the border with him, and tell those people who are in those buses, load those buses up and take them back to Mexico. Turn them around, drop them off. They're not going to stay in this country. And in the end, and they'll probably revoke whatever kind of card they give you when you're a liberal.
Is this something I should be talking about?
They don't give you a card for being a Democrat in Texas anymore. They used to, but they'd probably take that away from me for saying this too. But I think in the end, we're just going to have to get the border secure, and then once we've secured the border, we're just going to have to start hunting people down that don't belong here. Who have not gotten here legally, who are here illegally. I hate to say that. I really do. I mean, listen, man, I do not have anything against Latinos or people from Mexico or Guatemala, Honduras. I don't know. I don't like Honduras at all. Honduras cost me 5 of my best friends. When they went down there. Honduras is a no-go zone for Americans. It's been a no-go zone for Americans for an awfully long time, and that's because if you go to because it's the narcos. I mean, really, Honduras belongs to the narcos. It really does, and so it's illegal to go down there. You get killed when you're an American. 5 of my friends went down there and got killed. I don't have anything against anybody from any of these countries. Is what I'm trying to say. I know people will say I'm a racist. I know they will. But since when is it racist to want to defend the borders of your country? That makes everybody in the world a racist right there. Everybody in the world is a racist right now. They're having these big political fights in Germany and Italy and France and Sweden. There are countries in Europe that didn't take any immigrants. How many immigrants did Russia take? How many immigrants did North Korea take? Those are a couple of places where our president's been and done a lot of high fiving. I mean, how many immigrants did they take? Will they take some of ours? That's a good question. Can we send some of our immigrants to North Korea and Russia? I'd love to do that. In fact, why not? Why not? They're both socialist countries, so they ought to fit right in. So, those of you who have been ragging me for being a Dem and for being a liberal, and for ragging other liberals and Dems, and I don't know who these other liberals and Dems are personally. I mean, Obama was no liberal. Clinton was no liberal. Neither of the Clintons are liberals. Fact of the matter is I mean, and in all honesty, Richard Nixon was a much bigger liberal than any president we've had since. Honestly, almost most of the socialist, most of the things that are socialist that I disagree with, like just welfare and basically free money, for people who don't have enough of it or as much of it as they want. Well, that stuff was passed by Richard Nixon, and he was a Republican and a crook at that. God, I'd trade him for the guy we got right now any day. I think he might do something about the border. But the wall, whether or not the wall would work is really immaterial. We don't know, do we? You can't prove a negative. We won't know until we build the wall. I think we will build the wall. I've sent plenty of emails to Democratic leaders in the Congress and asked them to just give Trump the $5 billion and give it to him. Give it to him. We gave $20 trillion to the rich. Can't we give Trump $5 billion? Of course, what he's going to do is the same thing Cheney did. Guess who's going to build that wall? It's going to be Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to build that wall. When he says he's going to build that wall, he's not kidding. He's going to build it, and he's going to get paid for it out of that $5 billion. He's going to take that $5 billion and put up whatever it is he thinks is right to put up and as the wall. But the contracts are going to belong to him. They're not going to belong. They're not going to belong. And because why on earth shouldn't he? If Dick Cheney gave himself the money for funding the war in Iraq, which is essentially what he did, why shouldn't Donald Trump give himself the money for putting up the wall? He will. I guarantee. I'd put everything I have on it. So, but that doesn't really. I don't care. Give it to him. Give him $5 billion. Just give him $5 billion. Give it to him and say, "Here's $5 billion." And you always wanted to be a billionaire, Donald. Here, I mean, a real billionaire, not not a made-up billionaire. Here's $5 billion. Just put up a wall and please let us go on about our business. And would you please do something about the border while you're at it? And of course, I think the way to solve the border is to put military bases on it. Just to put military bases all along that border. I think that's the way to take care of that. So I've had my say, and and spring is in the air. It was a good video for that purpose, if nothing else. And I'll be seeing you again soon.
You can't touch this.